Thanks for staying with us. The City Press at the weekend reported that according to the Public Service Commission's 2020-21 report, many Directors General, Deputy Directors General, heads of department, chief directors and directors are serving as directors in various companies in the country. They also get paid for their duties in the private sector. This is despite the Public Administration Management Act explicitly prohibiting public servants from doing so. There have been various promises by those in leadership to deal with this ongoing problem, yet it appears as if it's not going away. Let's speak to Dr Salomon Hoogenraad-Vermaak. He is the head of the Public Administration Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Assistance Unit at the Department of Public Service and Administration. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. Now, according to this, the reports at the weekend, the companies are, of course, run by these employees, are part of, a group that's said to have generated about 60 million rand. This is in contract, and of course they're saying that these are the only ones the PSC has managed to detect. I wonder what is behind this ongoing problem, because essentially they're milking the state when the laws are clear.
Good evening. Let me explain. There's a big difference between other remunerative work and business with the state. In this, in terms of the Public Administration Act, the Public Service Act, a public servant can conduct or be interested and be involved in business itself. It must not conduct business with the state. So in this sense, the Public Service Commission found that 4% of senior management, that's now the DDGs, the DGs, the chief directors or so, 4% are involved in other remunerative work. Now, if you want to perform other remunerative work, there's a process that needs to be followed. You must apply before you start. The application must clearly indicate what it is that you are going to be involved in, the remuneration, all of that. And then the ethics officer makes a determination on your application form if there is a conflict of interest, because there's two criteria in terms of which you will be allowed to perform other remunerative work. The one is that it must not impact on your performance, and the other one is it must not impact on the code of conduct. So the ethics officer looks at the code of conduct side to see whether you will use equipment possibly, or time, or the offices and so forth. The second stage is when the supervisor then assess your application and see whether this will impact on your performance. If you're already a poor performer, it should not be allowed to continue. So there, in that sense, there's a process. You apply, the application comes back, you will either be granted or you won't be granted. So the 60 million rand that has been allocated to the 359 public servants, employees involved in other remunerative work is work that should be above board, that should be, it's in terms of the principles of the regulations. So, and it's 4% of the public servant top management, but if you the rest of the public service, there is 30,141 public servants in total that is engaging in other remunerative work, which is allowed, which went through the process, which is monitored. And in terms of the monitoring yearly, we assess this information. It's captured on the parcel system, and we find that most of it is recreational in nature. It is around sales and marketing, hospitality, and educational activity sector. So those are activities that, for example, like the teachers marking matric exam papers, that is allowed and continue because it also benefits government.
And what happens then in the cases where, they are not clearly coming forward to declare this double dipping, because it is a growing concern. Some of them are still not coming forward, which is something that is very serious when you look at how senior these employees are.
Exactly. So that is the one process. And that is where all senior managers are supposed to declare, in terms of the regulations, their financial interests in a year. And this is where the Public Service Commission found that 3 DGs, 1 HOD, and 4 HODs in provinces, so it's not many, it's names and faces to that. Those people did not indicate that they have an interest in a company. So it was detected, and they were then confronted with the information. It means that there's monitoring of this, and it's also they had interest in companies. It's not to say that there was conflicts of interest, and it's definitely not that they're conducting business with the state. Usually, to my own experience, when this happens, it's because the information that's captured on the companies and Intellectual Properties Commission database is outdated, where a person then think that he doesn't have to declare it because he resigned a year or 3 ago, and then unfortunately it still reflects on the SABC. But that is why the Public Service Commission will engage these employees and say that you did not disclose, and that is a failure, and are then guilty that there's steps taken in terms of non-compliance, but it's not doing business with the state. This strategy is quite effective because if you look at the Public Service Commission's report, there's a definite downward trend in terms of public servants not declaring their interests, because they now see that it's scrutinized by the Public Service Commission, and there's a decline of 9% from the previous year, and which is the best for the last 5 years in terms of decline.
And when one looks at the decline that you talk about, one of the concerning things, though, that I see in the report is that around 872 cases are being investigated, but the biggest concern are whistleblowers whose identities are not protected enough. And this is really concerning because some of them say that they are being threatened. This is, of course, according to this particular report. I wonder what is to be done in this case, because such individuals are not going to come forward to report some of, the fraud or anything that they're witnessing if they're not being protected.
The National Anti-Corruption Hotline allows for a person to make anonymous disclosures. And even in terms of the public service regulations, if a public servant comes forward with information that the person is concerned that he will be victimized, that information must be treated confidential. And in terms of when this is not honored, then the department can take steps against the individual who disclosed that information.
But you do agree, sorry, Doctor, my apologies, you do agree, though, that it does put their lives in danger if someone is to then expose them, because we saw what even happened to some whistleblowers in the past.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why I say in terms of the process, it must be strengthened in terms of departments, that they have reporting policies in place that allows for confidentiality, and that also distinguish between witnesses and whistleblowers, because there's a difference where a whistleblower in the public service should never ever face a situation where his life is at stake, because a whistleblower sees something that's wrong and wants to address it and therefore reports it. But if you witness to a crime, that is a different thing. And that is not a lot of people in the public service should theoretically be exposed to this. And this is then where you do need to have systems in place where a person wants to report a crime and want to be assisted by in terms of that aspect.
All right, Doctor, unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But thank you so much for putting us in the picture there, because this whole issue of double dipping is indeed concerning, and the non-disclosure thereof. But thank you so much. That's all we have time for. That was Dr. Salomon Hoogenraad-Vermaak. He is the head of the Public Administration, Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Assistance Unit at the Department of Public Service and Administration.